Hey there, welcome to Pixels Refreshed. We have Tyler here with us again because Tyler has been poking me about the Final Fantasy Pixel remasters. And they're a point of contention among a lot of game developers and artists, I feel, because for such a beloved series, it's weird to see them handled so tactlessly, I would say. Um,
Hmm.
I think that there's a lot to be said about it. I don't think that they my big thing with them is they're not the high upper echelon of pixel art, and that's a weird thing coming from the company that invented that echelon. So it's like Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy VI carved a lot of the visual look for how pixel art should go in video games. Same with Secret of Mana, and uh, there's other ones not from Square like Illusions of Gaia and a few other notable games. I mean, the Castlevanias were great for that kind of stuff as well. But, in regards to like JRPGs with pixel art, it was like Final Fantasy was the cream of the crop. Other than the battles, I have to say I have a feeling like a favorite for Breath of Fire 3, 2, and 1 for the battles because they had the diagonal like isometric from the back angle, so the camera angles were more dynamic, so the characters themselves looked better, but the environment work was much better in Final Fantasy VI, let's say. um, but anyways, I thought, Tyler, what did you want to talk about these specific things?
Oh, I'm more of a filthy casual than anyone who has serious critiques about remasters.
Yeah.
I'm more just like to talk about my fond memories of Final Fantasy, and it's nice to see an opportunity to re-experience it. But I would question what is so different about these remasters that they're even worth buying versus me just, emulating them because I
Yeah.
already own the originals.
Yeah, I have my original cartridges. I could pull them out right over there, or the PlayStation re-releases of them, or the PS3 re-releases of the PS1 versions, or the Game Boy Advance
How many?
re-releases. I have all of those as well. It's but the Game Boy Advance ones were very true to the original, and this is the question: is because Square has been re-releasing them, but like honestly, the Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy VI version they previously released on Steam were worse than playing an emulated original. They looked way worse. They were
Bleh, uh,
smear. They're
the
using
UI alone.
the UI. They're using like a bicubic filter on the pixel art, which was just turning everything to mush. And Final Fantasy VI is one of my favorite video games of all time. So I can't handle seeing it look like that. That's my personal gripe with it. But I love the game because there's so much it makes you process in that game, and I think that the hopelessness and the despair that game makes you feel is something that's hard to capture in other games. So some games have
There's
done
not
it.
a lot of games though that Oh, there's not a lot of games that like make you fail midway through as an adventurer,
Yeah.
especially, and then the world goes to hell. Like what?
Well, and the complex emotions that you deal with
Who's
afterwards, right? Because it's not that you fail; it's that they don't want to rejoin you, right? You have one of you keep going as Celeste, and then you have to find everyone again. And some of them are ashamed, some of them are afraid, some of them have just moved on, right? And the thing is that you can't solve the problem anymore. The world was already destroyed. You just have to be okay with that and just kill the guy who did it. It's not like at that point it's more of a revenge plot than it is. I mean, he's continuing to, drop thunderbolts and stuff on anyone who gets close. So there's reason to take him out, but it's not like it's not like they can refix the world or bring back everyone who was killed, right? It's like the only thing they can really do is get rid of the person who caused all of the issues. So, anyways, Tyler here has got some sprites that Tyler wants to talk about. So we could talk about some of those. I know these right away. It's like I'm imagining the boss fights on some of these. So, like, we could start with Final Fantasy IV. Um, can you scale these up?
well, I figured what I can try. I would just figure what better way to relive the nostalgia with some fun stories of our favorite encounters, and these pixel
The
arts
Demon
always
Wall.
kind of bring that right back. This thing scared the hell out of me when I first started playing.
Yeah.
I'm gonna zoom in.
Does it
That
make
should
you
do
does it
quite
make you
nicely.
wonder if it was like one of the key inspirations for the liquors from Resident Evil 2? Because it kind of looks like the.
Maybe I ask me anything about Japanese folklore, and I couldn't tell you a thing. But
It's true.
I would hazard to guess it's probably that particular demon face and claw motif is probably an old piece of art
Yeah.
inspired from some ancient manga, maybe. But
Yeah, I
It'd be cool if it was.
having just read all of Berserk lately, I'm noticing references to it everywhere, and I'm like, I did not realize how many people were secretly referencing Berserk. What was one of the ones that? Oh, I was watching the Castlevania, the new animated series, and one of the episodes is a direct nod to when Guts fights the what's his name? The giant guy under the cat. It's like there's so many scenes that are like nods to things and you don't even realize it if you haven't seen the source material. So when you look at something like this, you're like, maybe this is where Lickers came from. Maybe they were playing and they just logged it into the back of their brain somewhere. This boss, I remember, was really hard because you had to kill it in a certain number of turns or it would kill you outright.
That was what's so freaky about it, right? A lot of Final Fantasy boss fights were built on this idea that all you had to do is stabilize and you could whittle away the enemy's health.
Yeah,
This one
yeah,
put you on a clock right away, and it
yeah,
was fast too. Like on top of that, he would cast Soul in your party. He would cast Haste on himself, assuming I remember all that correctly. And yeah, if he crawled his way too far to the end of the screen, he would just one shot your characters, and there's
yeah,
nothing you could do.
yeah. That was in.
So it
You had
gets your
to.
heart going right away.
Didn't you have to? You had to get the chocobo. You had to fly to this location, so you felt more isolated too, because this is before you had the airships, before you had that stuff. Well, I think no, you had one of the airships, but you could only land in the forest, like a specific type of land, and then to go from forest to forest, you had to take the chocobo, and you landed here, and you felt like really isolated going through this. I remember that. Um,
I think you're thinking of the Dark Elf Cave, where all your you couldn't equip any metal, which is another cool
no, 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 I'm not thinking of the
story
Dark
Final
Elf
Fantasy
Cave.
set. Right.
I know the Dark Elf Cave because that's in the underworld. This is
Yeah, this is the underworld. You're thinking the Dark Elf
no,
Cave is in the
no.
overworld.
This guy isn't in the
Oh,
underworld.
I'm gonna win this one.
Demon Wall?
Internet, get him.
Uh, oh no. My keyboard is typing
This
something
is
dramatically.
this is.
You pull it up. You got it. You got your screen sharing right now. I'm clearly mashing a
Oh, I
keyboard
don't have any
somewhere.
evidence on this.
One second.
No, no, but I know I'm right here. This is a sealed cave of the underground. This is the final boss of that. But it leads me to another story of the monsters here, and I'm sure many of our fine viewers or Final Fantasy IV fans remember this annoying bastard.
Yeah.
Pardon the internet language here.
No, no, no.
This guy, you remember this guy?
I do. I'm trying to remember that specific fight.
So there's one unique mechanic of the sealed cave is that there's a bunch of closed doors everywhere. When you went up to a closed door, it was pre-programmed whether it would spawn one of these boss fights, or mini boss fights, I should say, or actually be a real door.
Yeah.
And if it was one of these guys, he would pop in, instantly kill one of your party members, and then you had to beat him before he killed the rest. He would
Yeah.
have like this attack that would automatically one-shot everyone.
Yeah.
This whole dungeon was long, it was tedious, it was brutal, but by the end you leveled up like a monster because you were just in there forever fighting high-level stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And can you explain to me what this thing is on the top of its head?
Is it a nail? I thought it was like I always thought it was like a peg, like going
But
in.
but why? Why would a door have a peg? This
Yeah.
pix all this pixel art, you of all people know, this pixel art is incredibly meticulously designed. Nothing is
Well,
an accident.
between 4 and 6, they leveled up a lot in their pixel art. It's a clear progression. The way that they did their tile work improved dramatically, and especially their boss work and their background work also. It felt less tile based. So there's two ways to read this, right? And this is kind of a problem with pixel art if you fail, is that someone might read it differently as intended. There's a boss in Mega Man X that's exactly like that, where you can read either the midsection as it has a giant head, or you can read the little thing on top as its head, and you can do it either way. And with this, it's either like trying to make you ignore perspective and it's like an eyebrow that's always quirked, or it's like a peg thing jammed into its head, and you could read it both ways, and it's a static image, it never animates, so you know it doesn't have any movement, because movement would solve that, right? Because the way that they would animate would compensate and it would show exactly how it moves. So if it's always kind of pivoting from that, it would. But if it goes down the other way or tilts the other way, then they're eyebrows, right? So it's like there's a bunch of things they could do with that. But to me, I always took it as like a big peg in the door. I don't know if it's like more of a reference to like Japanese things, because they often, if you play like Fatal Frame or whatnot, they're always putting what are they called? the notes they put on doors to seal them. They're like seals. They put seals and stuff on doors to try
Ah,
to block them. So it could imagine that it was one that was pegged on that got torn off or something like that. Of course, someone in the comments might know exactly what the reference would be, and it's like, but my thought would be something like that. What else we got?
so okay, so on the topic of misreading the pixel art, I think we gotta pop. Oh no, where is Zeromus?
Ceromus?
Ah, I don't have him.
Rubicante?
Can you pull him up? The
I
final
can,
boss
but
of
it,
FF4.
yeah, I know Zeromus.
See if
Zero.
I can go over here because I misread this sprite for the longest time until like basically the last 2 years.
Okay, I see it.
Zeromus. So they put this big giant blue eye.
Okay,
This is not the correct image, but it's close
I think I see
enough.
it.
Ah,
Here, let me take over here for a second. I'll share my. They'll see it on my screen. I gotta take over the share screen. Yep. There, you can see it there. You see that?
yep, beauty. So
So that was Zero Miss. So my thoughts here, right, are that this is the head, right, and you have
which makes sense when you break it down. You can see like an eye and a face and a nose.
yeah. So you way you're reading this, I would imagine, right? This is the eye, or you could even read this being the eye, and this is an eyelid, or you could read both of them being the eye and it being some alien thing. This would be like the mouth thing, right, with pincers. But I think the way that you're intended to read it is that this thing right here, just that section, is the head, right?
Yeah, and it looks like this very like not Resident Evil-y, but you know how they put a human face on the monsters, right? To
To,
make them
to me,
I don't
this
know,
is
I
more
guess
like
more
Gradius. This is something that you would fight with your spaceship
right.
in space, right? Like, I could see that kind of thing. But they clear this up in the other art that comes later on it, and then they definitely make that the body in the updated art. So it's
Yes.
curious though, because those could also be different artists. So they might just be reading the pixel art differently than intended. Both are possible. So, anyways, I'm going to jump back in your thing so that you can. One second. I got to get more of this. I got to full screen this talk. Okay. Let's get you
Yeah.
on. Okay, so you can talk about whatever the other ones you want.
Oh, that's a good one. I mean, let's have some fun. Let's jump right into
6.
Final Fantasy VI.
This is going to be
So
the ones that I'm going to get the most upset about in the updates because 6 had such good pixel art.
yeah, if you could find the updated version, and this is
Well,
I'm
we can
just
watch the
these are
trailers together if you
horribly
want
smooth. Yeah, let's do
because
it.
we can watch the trailers together because the big point in some of this is that some of these things are downgrades that they're doing, in my opinion. Some of them aren't. It's more clear cut with like sorry, let me get the Steam pages up.
Yeah, I'd be curious as to how, because you're going to read it so much differently than me. I'm reading it as a fan who programs. You're actually someone who makes pixel art for a living.
Yeah.
I want to know what are the actual per pixel changes that
Okay.
are so negative.
Yeah, there's a lot. Let's see. There's not the best trailer. Let me grab another one. The Steam page has one per game, and that's the best way to do it. So pull up the Steam pages. Let's see, 4. Okay. Which version of 4 is this though? Because they have the 3D version. They have the. You know what I mean? Oh, the Doom Train.
I was going to be try and be funny and rotate it upside down, but
When he suplexes
I
it,
can't make that. Yeah.
if you use
Oh, come on.
suplex on it. Yeah, it's kind of funny that it's somewhat forgiving with like that people forgive these games a little bit. You know what I mean when it comes to how they look comparatively. Like sorry, like you're doing something crazy over the top, but people believed it as in something that was, you know, I don't know. You forgave these big supernatural things in Final Fantasy 6 and 4 when you're fighting a wall or you're suplexing a train or you're literally fighting a battle down a waterfall the entire time. It like makes no sense. So
Your characters are just standing there. There's fish. There's not statically moving.
I'm gonna share
So it
my
will do
Steam
all your
page with you now. Okay. Let me know when you
Yeah,
see it. Can you see the video is the question.
I can. I'm good.
You're good. Okay. So this
I
is the
mean,
Final Fantasy IV remaster video.
oh, that music.
I love the
Give me
music in
give
it.
me nerd chills.
How am I not getting the connection necessary? Steam's videos never load very quickly. It's
Oh, they have atrocious buffering when you go full screen.
so the big things that are not working, right? It's like overall it's better, but they're adding way too much color gradation to soften the pixel art. So they're actually killing the contrast in their art, right? If I pull
Isn't
up,
this?
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, give me no. Show me the original side by side if you can get that going.
I can't and
I
give you
was just gonna
sound, but
say like,
that's
it's fine. I might buy these just for the remastered soundtrack alone.
yeah, yeah. So
There goes the filthy casual in me.
Final Fantasy IV, Cecil. If we pull up Cecil, other people will see it right away. I gotta put Sprite. I want an original version. The big thing that they're
Original
doing
easy
is
type, hard
they're
type.
killing the contrast in the sprite. So this is the original. They've softened all the contrast. Here, I gotta share. I gotta change how I'm sharing screen so you can see. This is gonna be the most. What is it?
Technology.
Tech. It's gonna be this one here.
I spend a lot.
Okay, you'll see now. But you won't hear anymore. So we have the original version. Sorry, I gotta pull that over top.
Yeah, no.
So we have the original version in Steam there. I want to go full screen, but I also want the other one on top. Let's see if I can do that. And then this one. And what you see right away is, yeah, Final Fantasy IV wasn't the best sprites comparatively, and they use a little bit more primary colors, but they soften the gradients too much. One thing that you typically do with pixel art is as the color goes like wraps around to some other part of it, you might go more like purple or something like that, whereas this is all very monochromatic. So all of these golds are like in the same gold family. There's too many pixel colors, right? And look at the hair. So it's like you're getting this contrast where you feel like the head is rounded and this is just kind of mushy, right? It's this weird mushiness in the pixel art and it kills it for me. It's not good pixel art. And the thing is that it's not bad pixel art either, but it's like you have the Octopath team right there. Talk to them. Like hire a pixel art team to remaster these that understand what good pixel art looks like. Like I don't know if that makes sense to you, but that's what I think when I look at it. Um,
Oh no, totally.
and
Um,
Kane is even worse. So here, let's watch the video for a bit and see when Kane comes up. Like,
oh,
look at how
favorite
mushy
character.
that is. Like the colors in this are it's all too gradated within it, so it's like going against that sharp contrast. Okay, so when it comes to pixel art, one of the things that makes pixel art look like a really cool way for simplification of visuals is limiting of colors, right? And they're not limiting their colors in a very flattering way. They're going kind of crazy with gradients, but keeping the box constraints around the characters. Like to me, the original version of Kane. Oh, sorry, that's Dark Knight Cecil. Where's Kane? It was Kane sprite. Like
Best Final Fantasy
way
character, by the way.
well, it's because he leaves all the time and comes back, right? Look at this. Like look at how much more contrast there is in this and how much more washed out this is, right? It's not a bad sprite, but I would say that it's losing that contrast and whatnot and just feeling it feels more like a Photoshop filter, to be perfectly honest. Like it doesn't read Rosa right here. It's probably the same. I think this is going to be much worse when it comes to Final Fantasy VI instead of this. I think the character design here maybe is a little bit better. Like it's a little bit more Final Fantasy VI, and it reads
It
better.
looks like it looks like a completely different person to me though. Like Kane and Cecil work because they look the same. This one
Yeah,
looks like her hair is different. She has a different. She comes off with a much softer face and much more of a. I guess best word is softer, more priestly. Whereas Rosa is a lot. The original, she's got a lot more squareness to her, which in my interpretation, makes her look a little more like a warrior, a little more. I guess tough is probably the word I'm going for.
yeah. So when we look at like Kane here, sorry, let me get that bigger. We
Well,
going from sorry, go ahead.
with the, one thing with Kane too, I'm noticing the contrast you're getting on the original. This makes his armor actually look shiny. It makes it look like there's like a
Specularity.
real royal. Right,
So it looks like it
right.
has metal specularity versus here where it's all kind of like mushy and matte feeling. The other thing
Yeah.
is like I can't even count how many colors are in here. So it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, like 11, 12. There's like 40 different shades. It looks incohesive as pixel art
Uh,
because it doesn't look
well,
like they were trying to monitor their colors or control it in any way.
am I a heretic if I say though I kind of like the new Kane just because I'm personally a fan of those kind of colors. The Radiant almost seems kind of works and makes it look, I guess, simpler and more readable.
So it
But at the
looks
same time,
okay here. It looks worse in game because
all right,
everything comes off looking mushy in the game. There's a screenshot they show. I don't know if they show it here or whatnot, but like right there, it's like if you
oof,
look at that
I,
sprite of Kane
those
and like that just looks like mushy. It doesn't look
looks like he's
like
got a metal beard going on there.
well, yeah. So it's like the chest plate, the separation. It's, I mean, small sprites are hard to do. I've had to do a lot of them. They're fun because they look ultra cute when you do them. But when I'm looking at these, like, there's too many colors in that space, and they just kind of look. It looks really, I don't know, like RPG Maker to me. It doesn't look like good pixel art. It's not thought out enough from a color perspective. That's my thought on it. I
Just
would never
a little weak on the art direction. Too much saturation.
I would never draw them like this. Like I don't know. When I look at this, it's like everything just looks softened, right? It's like putting a bilinear filter on the entire game, but in your color palette.
Now hold there for a second too. On the color, I want to just touch on the UI real quick. Why do they insist on having the UI rendered at a different, I guess, pixel density? Like that text is rendered not at the same what's the term for it, right? Because you got like I guess a 4 times pixel
Yeah,
density.
well, you're talking about like just essentially like this is HD, right? But even if they
Yes.
had done it as pixel art, they wouldn't have matched the resolution. So there'd just be like pixel density mismatches or resolution mismatches. So I mean, most Super Nintendo games were what, like how much were they? Were they 320 by 240? I'm trying to remember what it was, or was it half of it? Was it 120 by? Anyways, regardless of whether it was what it was, there was a
See the
set.
Super Nintendo resolution?
Yeah, Super Nintendo game resolution.
Was it
Um,
240?
it's 240 by 120.
It depends. Progressive was 224. Or no,
224.
yeah.
Yeah, so something like that. So I know with the Game Boy Advance versions, they had to crop the screen because Game Boy Advance could do the same quantity of colors, but they couldn't have the same screen ratio because it was a smaller pixel ratio. So they'd have to crop into the games for Super Nintendo games. So you'd lose the top and the bottom and a bit. Um, but anyways, so this is I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of the art direction in this. Mind you, it's much better than what they did to Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy VI originally. Like
Oh, let's not speak of Final Fantasy 6.
what they did to it there was
They
abysmal.
killed my baby.
When it comes to like, sorry, did they have a trailer for Final Fantasy One? This is the OST and wallpaper. Where is one? Right here. See, this is more forgivable because the original doesn't look as good. Like no one heralds Final Fantasy One as like a pinnacle of pixel art, and because it was limited by the NES, right? It's like anything would be more of an upgrade, although it still has the same issues where it's like too many colors on the character. It's like I feel like if I was to take this, let's do this, Windows Shift S. I wonder if I could make this look better in like literally 3 minutes.
You're on the clock now.
I'm on the clock. 3 minutes
I'm
is
noticing. I'm just now noticing between these remasters, it's like they're trying to achieve the same art style for all 6 games, which almost feels like a fool's errand because 6 has such a distinct tone with
oh
its
yeah.
color palettes and its present overall presentation. 5 is like super colorful. 4, because they were kind of in the early days of the SNES, they were limiting their palettes a little bit. They were limiting kind of their overall look, so it was a
Yeah,
little
yeah.
less tight and cohesive, but it still worked. And then you got 1, 2, and 3, which all have, their NES games. The technical limitations did a whole bunch. Uh, and now you're basically forcing them to all look the same. And you're going to dilute the identity of each game
Yeah.
when you do that. I mean, if you
Yeah.
look at 5, like 5 is such a playful game. Like this actually, I feel like this works the best for them. But for 6, I'm very curious how that's going to feel like with this treatment.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm just trying to get the exact pixel ratio for this. It looks to be about, I don't know. What do you
It's an
think?
8x8.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9-ish. 9 times. I got to find the exact resolution scale into that. It's
Or you draw a ton of guides, but you don't want to do that.
yeah, I don't want to do that. I can go like this, and I can literally just scale down until it gets clear. Oh, stupid Photoshop. Oh, do I have I have a nearest neighbor? There should be a point where it gets sharp, right? Maybe
Or
there.
if I could write a Photoshop script to automate that.
That's not terrible. Gotta get closer. The only problem here, let me full screen this. If I can get this to its proper pixels, then I can do it. Oh, I had it.
As a tools programmer, this is fascinating to watch.
I'm just trying to. Oh no, I had it. Then when I pushed enter, I lost it. There we go. Pixel perfect. Okay, so
Beauty.
now we
Yeah.
have our pixel perfect version of this. Actually, I think that it fixed some of the mushiness. But typically, what I would do if something like this, if I was to do a remaster of it, is I would like pick a light source, reduce your color palette, pick a light source, drop it on one side of the sprite, right? And then pick a highlight source, and I would go even more contrast on the highlight, not much else, just to create sense. Actually, I should copy this and then just undo everything I did and just paste it on top as a new layer, so that I can compare. And then same thing here. You can have some of this, but they just went nuts with it. They lost their control. And you could even upgrade this even more. You could do like, if you really wanted to go kind of like modern, you might just, instead of doing black, you could do a darker brown for the hair or something like that, right? These are the things that I think that a modern pixel art version of these would do rather than what they did. The big thing that they're losing is they're losing their overall sense of like everything just kind of looks mushy. And then I would pick, let's see. You could even have kind of like the shadow in these areas. Let's
Gives them a
see.
little more of a gruffness,
First,
almost like it's got 5 o'clock shadow going on.
well, it's just contrast in the character, right? So it's like, look at this. It's like every single square is a different color for some reason. Why? What is the advantage of that? And the other thing is, it's like, why isn't it highlighting? Is this like a belt? Where do the pants end, right? Like, why aren't we?
Question I ask every day.
Well, I have to ask these things. Is this pixel readable, right? It's like, and you could even, if you wanted to, you can get to like something like this. I don't know. This is like very quick, rudimentary. What I might do, I would completely redraw them from scratch. I wouldn't even like, if I was tasked with this, I would try to create a new aesthetic kind of thing. I don't. I'm or if with Final Fantasy VI, I would try to keep as true. But it's like these guys created the standards for pixel art. Like Final Fantasy
Hmm.
VI inspired so many artists, like a crazy number of artists, and it's kind of crazy that what we're getting just doesn't show that inspiration. It shows like someone being forced to do pixel art that doesn't know what they're doing. So it's like even that.
I
It's
wonder
like
if can't help but wonder if maybe they suffer from the misconception that pixel art is easy, so they throw whatever artist they can at it.
yeah. I mean, it's possible. But I don't
It's
know.
a
It's like immediately that reads better to me, but I don't know that I would take way more time making it look much better than that. But it's like the other thing typically that I would do is as it goes, I would go to more towards like warmth on the on this side as it wraps on that side of the body, and then as it goes to the other side, I usually go cooler. or vice versa, depending on the aesthetic.
Uh,
And that
the old
usually,
Orange trick to make something look dynamic.
well, if you never, it's like no one in painting. It's like if you want to reduce how much light's on an object, you add its complement, right, to desaturate it. That's good painting. If you don't do that, then you're doing bad painting. That's typically how it goes. So it's like, anyways, it's just I don't know. It's just something mushy about it. There's just so many better ways that I feel like you could have tried to. And it's just like even the background mismatch. It's like you have this background here. I don't know if you see that. It's like it doesn't even really look like pixel art anymore, but it looks a little stranger than that.
Oh, they put like a dynamic, like almost a lighting on the water.
Yeah,
So now it's like consistent.
they got a crazy dense particle going over the entire scene here.
Yeah, that could be okay, but I can't stand it when the pixel density of, I guess that's the term I'm using. The pixel density of the effects don't match the world. Like you can have bloom, that's fine. It gives it a nice sense of light and brightness. But as soon as you have like these flames that are completely different I guess pixel density than your world, it looks inconsistent. It looks messy.
Yeah, well, it's just like look at this guy here, right? It's like
Ooh, that's
and
rough.
yeah, that character looks really rough. But and even like the way that this hat is here, it's like, oh my gosh, it's disgusting to me. It's like I feel like I could fix that character and like this character here, that drives me nuts. It's like I would spend so much time making these characters with love if I ever got a chance to work on something like this, right? It's like not that
I'm sure the art director over there is loving this. So
no,
good
they'd
luck.
probably despise me. Is that right? So it's just like with this here, it's like, come on, you
Yeah,
know?
that the robe is so flat now that you've kind of, well, you tickled my head with the lighting side of things. And for our listeners, I do a little bit of graphics programming on the side. Light is kind of, that's all we do. We make light do its thing against surfaces. And
You hate me because I'm always like trying to push the light to make the scene look better as opposed to what is accurate with
I don't
light.
hate you for pushing the aesthetics. I hate because how light actually behaves in the real world is not aesthetically pleasing. So we must break the rules to make it look good.
Yeah, it's just like there's so much mushiness in whatever was happening before. I gotta select all, copy, and then undo all of it so that I can compare. I always keep forgetting to duplicate the layer at the beginning.
Name your layers, organize them, and so forth.
Yeah, exactly. Oh no, but this is like I'm gonna throw these away right away. So what the heck's the point of that?
Yeah. Well, they're on
Uh,
the internet forever, though.
Whatever. I throw out images all the time. Let's see. Just curious. But it's like, oh man, I feel like this is a real missed opportunity. There's so many amazing pixel artists in the world, right? That having these kind of like mushy sprites representing one of the series that made people fall in love with pixel art in the first place is just such a I don't know, it's such a shame. It's just like
Well, they'll remaster it again in 3 years, so maybe
yeah,
they'll
but they
get it
haven't
right
gotten a
that time.
remaster right in a long time. Like it's
They're, I
like they don't understand what people are asking for with them.
think that's a product of they're not making us happy, or they don't know who they're making happy.
I don't think they know who they're making happy anymore, and I don't think they have the employees they used to have. The big question though is like when you have a team like whatever the team is that does Octopath at your studio, freaking use them. Like tell them to hire the team because whoever you have in control of outsourcing whatever it is, you should stop because it's like look at this mushy garbage, right? It's like and you would even do like especially go to distance, you're just going to get so much sharper visuals and you can like there's so many amazing artists that do amazing things with really limited um color palettes, especially with animation, where they go like if there was any way you could improve these classic games, you could take the pixel art and you could push the animation to an absolutely ludicrous degree. That's what you could do, right? Because it's like these sprites would be so simple to animate, and the texture memory is nothing nowadays.
Hmm.
So that's one area that you could go nuts with making these games look better. but like the decisions they're making, it just kind of they're doing the backgrounds and stuff, but like this background looks like a huge mishmash to me. The other thing you could do is like you could literally like I don't
The
know have it
perspective is completely broken too on those backgrounds.
you could have a
But I
shader with
digress.
like reflective light or something, that reveals a little bit. Like this is what they do in Eastward, right? They have like just a tiny little layer that gets revealed sometimes by some lighting sources of, you know,
Yep.
backlighting
No.
on the characters. And then you could make like to me
Well,
that's
you don't
night.
even have to use separate layers. You can put the normals right on the pixels themselves, and then have each of them respond to light differently. You could do it right in the shader level if you wanted to.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, I mean, you could do it through, yeah, like literally having one pixel normals that are revealed. But it's
Yep.
like I don't know, does that look better to you? To me, that looks, and I'm not even trying right now. This is just like,
So, okay, you know what I'd love to see? The original Final Fantasy, whenever they cast a spell, you'd get this uh, full screen flash effect. It would
yeah,
be very cool to see when they have that little jet of fire in front. You have that that specular light. Put that in the front, so it looks like their own spell is shining light on them.
yeah.
Tell me that wouldn't like give their spells a little sense of power, especially if it's the higher tier spells,
Well,
or
Final
even
Fantasy
like
VI spells are mostly just like warping around the screen. That's all they were. But like, okay,
I'm referring to like just to number one though at this point.
but it's like
Six, yeah.
when you zoom in on this, it's like this doesn't even look like pixel art. It just looks like mush, right? And it's like you could have done such nice crisp pixel art. And I feel like I'm getting that with the backgrounds here too. It's like a mismatch of resolutions. Like this doesn't feel like it's a set resolution. This reminds me of like the pixel art
It looks like
backgrounds.
RPG Maker.
Well, it looks like PS1 RPGs when they're not being saved by a TV, a CRT.
Right.
Like you get
Yep.
this with like the Legend of Mana backgrounds and things like that, where it just looks like it doesn't look like it's a pixel match for the characters, and it just looks a lot of it looks fudged. Like there's just weird things. Is like, is it pixel art? Is it not pixel art? It doesn't look like clean and slick the way that modern pixel art backgrounds. And I've done a lot of pixel art backgrounds,
I
and
wish they did more with the negative space too in the front, like especially the bottom left. You just this perspective because mess of a perspective. Like, don't be afraid. Just put a black bar.
yeah,
Or I would even say
yeah,
leave it to the UI. Don't let the user get their eyes there. Because if
yes.
you got this detail, that is meaningless.
So, anyways, I have some gripes. I mean, obviously, it doesn't look as crude because the original games do look crude, right? I'll give them that. But it's like when you start messing with like, especially six, because
Don't hurt my baby.
do they have six here? Do they have a trailer for it? I gotta see.
As a fan, I feel like I own it.
Yes. For where's the whole bundle?
Careful.
Uh,
Don't buy the whole thing.
I already have it. I'm just
Oh,
not logged into my Steam here. Come on, give me six. Let me see the whole bundle.
click on there you go.
No,
You click on bundle info.
bundle info. Where's that? Oh, here we go. Bundle info. Do they have a page open for it? Yeah, let's see if they have a
There you
trailer
go.
for it. Oh no, they have a trailer for it. I'm gonna cry inside.
It's okay. Tomorrow's another day.
Oh no, this isn't six. I guess this is the
Okay.
general trailer for all
Yeah.
of them. It's not a specific one for six.
I guess I just haven't revealed it yet.
Yeah, they might. They probably are. They know it's the most sensitive one out of them, so
The work's done, right? They're not going to be unless like 5 gets panned and they're going to go back to the drawing board, which wouldn't be unlike Squeenix, but
yeah.
who
Do you
knows?
want? Do you want to just play a little bit of like 4 or 5? Well, five's not out yet. We could play 4, and then we could just talk about it. You can see my screen, right?
Yeah, you go ahead and play. I will commentate as
Yeah,
I
you
go
can
on.
commentate on it. Do I have my Xbox controller thing hooked
It's
in?
got one of the best intro songs, though.
It does.
Holy
You can't
cow.
hear any of my sound right now, though.
I'll use my imagination.
Use your imagination.
I've
Okay.
played them enough times. It's like a Simpsons episode on mute. I can quote the whole thing.
I gotta get past that. So it's just like I don't know. Do you feel like my quick pixel fixes on them look better? That's my question to you, right? It's like I'm I think I have my impressions of what makes pixel art look better, but I don't know. Maybe some people like fudgy pixels.
I
So,
can't judge based on the 1 or 2 sprites you've done, but I would definitely rather play your remaster or your take of a remaster,
yeah.
which you get the right set of emulators, you won't be too tricky to do, honestly.
So they added the horizon. They did this in the Game Boy Advance version too, because the original SNES version didn't have the horizon, right? And those pixels aren't at the same resolution match. But
it's such a deliberate choice too, like to make the airships look as old as they did, but to have that water look so reflective. It's almost like a diorama tribute to the old game. In a
it
way,
is.
Right?
The music is good though. I have to give the music credit for where it's due.
Yeah, they can't screw that up. Hopefully.
No, I mean they can.
You could
possible.
say that the muddiness or the mushiness, was really visible on Cecil's back right there, especially when you compare it to the guard helmets.
Well, it looks like they didn't do as harsh. So if you look at that guy, the Sage 2-up, he doesn't look as harshly treated as your characters. It's like they added more of that to your characters than they did to the other characters. And it also feels like these environments, there's just too many colors too close together is what it feels like.
Yeah, because I guess your brain goes like, hold on, there's so many colors in the sprites, but why is the pixel density so low? Or why is it such a resolution?
Yeah, there's
the two kind of go hand in hand.
But it's like, even look at these grills here. Like,
the cannons too, right? Like there's no outline, there's no contour.
But it's not even like an outline. It's that the pixels aren't describing anything distinct. It's like, what is this mushiness in these spaces? Like, why is it not like showing ropes distinctly? Or, they could have easily separated this cannon portion and then did more in the contrast to help with some of those things, and they just don't.
You can see it too in the steering wheel, right? Or whatever. It's like, why does that have a nice black outline?
Yeah. It's interactable. This is how they differentiate between the two.
Oh dear.
Oh, and you're even getting like blocking around these textures, which is
is rough. But
this
you can
is
tell with the rope. Well, I guess the rope hole. I'm gonna call it that. That was downscaled from something.
Yeah, this is. I mean, that was a common tactic. Even when you play, I was playing Metroid Fusion recently, and they had a lot of scenes like that. But it's like, even this gradation off the top of this blue, it's just like, some things are overly soft, some things are not. It's like, even their stair-stepping on the bridge there was a bit weak.
I can't get over that. I'm not gonna say much more about the UI, but I hate it.
Yeah.
That way. It's far too HD versus the rest of the game.
Did you ever see the Maguri mod for
I played it
for Final Fantasy 9? Right? Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, I've actually never played 9 before that. Played it recently, with just that mod on. So I've never actually played 9 with the original graphics.
So they added a legit water shader to the water.
Oh, you would put refraction.
And
reflection.
It's funny because I talked to the Raw Fury guys a lot, who did Kingdoms, 2 Crowns, and they spent forever trying to make a pixel art water shader look right. So when I see something like that, where it's like they clearly just like picked a shader and they added, it's like the specular light's kind of nice, but it just makes everything look so mushy.
We'll have to take a swing at that one day if we ever go back to 2D pixel art.
Yeah,
2.5D pixel art.
One of my favorite things in this that wasn't as much in the other Final Fantasies is like looking for a black spot in the just a weird hole in the wall that wasn't, and like going through some weird invisible path. Because this game was full of it.
Oh yeah, and I still will discover new ones as I play and watch other people do Let's Plays and speed runs. That's a secret the entire time.
Yeah. It was kind of interesting that early on, because one of the very first missions that you do in this where you accidentally kill everyone in that town. Right, yeah. And then that makes you question everything that you were doing so far, right? It's like they have some of like that.
It's such a trope now. The idea that you were it's especially in Final Fantasy games that maybe the Empire you're fighting for isn't so hot after all.
Yeah.
Oh God, what did they do to Kane? Looks like he's some sort of a water warrior.
Yeah, I know. I'm not the biggest fan. See, this is like Final Fantasy IV is like the point at which I will forgive them. But everything afterwards, I won't forgive the adjustments they make. Because I guarantee they're going to make 5 and 6 look way worse than they are. That's my guarantee. It's not going to be the best versions of those games.
5 is pretty rough visually. 6, I don't have a lot of hope. They added a mini-map. Huh.
Is that just, are they emitting particles
Where
for the fire?
looks like it.
So that would have been likely a 2-frame sprite in.
It's too low res in my stream to really read it very well.
Yeah. It looks like a proper particle emission. Is it repeating? Is the question. No, it's not looping.
Like
It's not looping. So it's they actually have added particle effects on top of it. I mean, that's not bad. There are a lot of pretty good. What's the name of it? I've used particle effects, like things that simulate particle effects with pixel art.
Sorry, what's the question?
Oh, I was just talking about like there are programs you can do that you can make sprites essentially that are made from like you make a particle effect and you basically turn it into pixel art and sprites before you export it.
Yeah, you make a sprite atlas or a sprite sheet.
Yeah.
Tons of tools. Yeah.
I'm trying to think of the name of one of them that we used before.
Oh, there's so many of them at this point.
We didn't end up like for Star Renegades. We didn't end up
ourselves.
using it. We ended up like we tested it because it was gonna in theory save time, but we couldn't make anything look as good as we wanted with it. So I just hand drew all of them, and Matt made some extra ones.
Lord. No, we're not doing that anymore. I'm gonna make you a tool.
I don't know.
Hold on, did I see diagonal movement?
No, I don't think so. I'm trying to remember where to go. I know you just talk to Kane and you get out of here. Oh, Rosa.
You gotta go to bed.
Yeah.
Rosa's completely different.
Yeah, I know. They tried to Celeste her a little bit.
Well, Celeste was a warrior, and I had a lot of respect for her.
Which is general.
She was flawed, but yeah, she was, she felt like a real person.
Yeah.
This Rosa does. The Rosa I remember kind of told Cecil, like, what's the best way to say this? They felt like they were on equal footing as partners. This Rosa looks like the typical anime sidekick heroine.
Yeah, they neutralized her a little bit, I think.
Right?
Yeah. I don't know. It's just like, to me, there's something so mushy about all of this pixel art.
Oh yeah, that's definitely a pick. Okay, so this is the same reason I don't like the traditional like procedural physics that you see from Havoc or PhysX, where you see a pile of boxes fall over, you know, oh, that's a physics engine, and your mind immediately goes to, okay, this is that kind of game. I get the same impression from those procedurally generated particles, in that this is a system making art. It's not something that's been hand authored, and it completely feels like a different genre of art, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, I could see that. Well, it's like looping constraints, right? Like, there's something to a beautiful loop.
Yeah, I just want to see 3 frames of a torch, or even 2 frames going back and forth, back and forth.
Yeah.
Like,
and
as soon as you put that pixel in, my eyes are drawn to it because it's so visually interesting that it completely it makes itself stand apart so much more than the rest of the game.
Yeah.
Like, that's
and it's
all
everywhere.
my eyes getting drawn right now.
When the water there too. Is it?
Same with the water. Your eyes should be on the characters, not the backgrounds.
Oh my gosh! Do you know how many amazing pixel artists there are on like Twitter that make crazy scenes like this? To see something like this that looks like so fudged, it's like, oh, I don't know.
Product passion versus product of a paycheck, I guess.
No, I don't know. You can do both. There's so many artists that would be super stoked to be working on a Final Fantasy that I don't think would fall into the same caveats.
No, production is hard.
Yeah.
Timelines are hard. Money is hard.
See, when I'm playing this, and I'm
use that font.
I'm on the verge of like literally going back to an emulator and running this.
No, you gotta get through the end. Yeah, do the moon grind and get all the get all the bonus weapons.
So I have a funny story about Final Fantasy IV. There's only one spot you can land on the moon initially with the moon ship and progress the story, and if you move, it puts you there right away when you land, but if you move, it's almost impossible to find it again.
Yep.
And I couldn't find it. And
the moon is so tiny.
My brothers wouldn't show me where it was. They refused to. So one day I hid under the coffee table behind the couch and waited till they played Final Fantasy IV because they said they were going to play it. And then they went and they saw where they landed on the moon, and I was like, aha, that was the spot. And they're like, Brian, you weren't supposed to find out. And it was like this funny thing that happened when I was like, I don't know how old I would have been.
That is a very charming Brotherhood story.
Yes. I hate the mouse cursor not going away. That drives me nuts.
What? That's a heresy. I can't live with that.
Like,
I don't see it on my screen.
look at this background.
For it.
Does this look like anything other than noise to you?
I don't like that the characters are sitting so high on the horizon line. They should. The horizon needs to be higher, or the characters need to be placed lower.
Well, that's hard to do because that's their initial placement. Like, I get being forced into those, like, that's crushed perspective in the top. Like, Final Fantasy VI did that initially, too. That was part of it. You have this crushed perspective on the top layer. But it's like, come on, when I see this background, I'm just curious.
Diagonal movement.
Yeah, there is diagonal music. I don't know. Let's see if I can find something real quick. I'll have to pull this on the other screen.
No, the sword rats are gonna take you out.
Oh, whatever. Oh yeah, is it active?
Yeah.
Active battle.
ATV.
Let's see if I can find anything.
I'm gonna look at some of the other. There's a couple really good fun. Well, the old NES had some very good backgrounds, all things considered.
Yeah.
Never gonna find it though. Final Fantasy X battle background. Oh yeah, there's a bunch of really good ones. One in particular really stood out to me. Let's see if I can find it.
See, even when I go crazy animating a battle background like this, right? It looks much more like how I remember Final Fantasy VI's backgrounds looking, like just crisper and not as fudged. Do you know what I mean? It's like the ones that I've done at various points in time for Star Renegades, or you know what I mean? It's just like
they're well composed, but they're also like, yeah, like that's where my eye goes. Like those are. Wow.
But it's like, I don't know. It's just done not as fudgy, right? It's like even this where it's like, and this is where you get kind of like those crazy pixel art masters, and I aspire to be one. But where they do crazy things with like hills and mountains and stuff in the background like that, right? And it's like when I see this, it's like
okay. What I see is there's no story there, right? There's nothing that makes that I see that, and that tells so much about the world and gives it some more richness. This looks like it's the most generic Dragon Quest-y, not to harp on Dragon Quest too much, but there's nothing special about that world, right? There's nothing fantasy about that world.
Yeah, or it's like even Pixel Demaster. It's just the sharpness. It's like, I don't know. There's something about when I like the pixel art stuff that I've done. I'm trying to capture kind of something that like Final Fantasy VI stumbled on back in the day, right? And I don't I don't know. I find it offensive when people miss what made Final Fantasy look so good at that point in time, because it's like I can put my thing in 3D, which is what I had to do with all the Star Renegades backgrounds without losing that. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Meanwhile, it's like they're losing it in 2D, where they're not even moving the games to some 3D 2D hybrid. And it's like, I don't know. It's like even this, like this is
Remaster.
This is in 3D, right? And I feel like it captures more of that pixel art classic aesthetic. And I'm not, I'm not a god of these kind of things. There are going to be people with different opinions, right? But it's just my opinion when it comes to these kind of how pixel art should be done. It's like there's a set aesthetic that was encountered between PS1 and it's like, I don't know, the battle backgrounds for Star Renegades, but anyways, I feel like you keep way more of that sharpness, and like that's what I was trying to do, and I was inspired mostly by like Chrono Trigger Final Fantasy backgrounds, so it's like with a mix of like more modern things like Dark Souls or whatnot, but it's like just the sense of space versus, I don't know.
Yeah, that's huge, right? Especially telling a game world, like you have so much freedom to make the world as interesting as possible. Why wouldn't you use that?
Yeah.
Like I'm real quick with this on the Final Fantasy backgrounds. On my screen here, if you look at the top.
Yeah, you want me to switch to your screen?
Yeah. So the column on the right.
Okay, let's pull you up 1 second.
I sees it.
Okay. Oh no, wait. I moved OBS. I should be moving Discord. It's alright. There we go. I got you up.
Cool. Yeah, so column on the right, second from the top, this shows up in the swamp.
Yeah.
The character in those trees is just so incredible for setting the tone of... Because you see this when you're fighting zombies, when you're fighting some fairly difficult monsters where you have to hop. And it gives so much context as to where you are. You're in this... The background is dark, so it's presumably it's night. These trees are like incredibly foreboding. The ground is all water. It's not comfortable to walk on. Like, that sells so much of the world to me. And this was like... In the original Final Fantasy, that came off to me as like an old D&D adventure. So it was meant to be grounded in a world that felt familiar, but it still has an element of fantasy and danger to it.
Well, and the other thing, like I always say this about the NES to Super NES palettes, but they forced otherworldliness when the artists themselves may not. And there's something about improving these things that just makes it seem more like our world, and then it feels less fantasy, right? Like, sorry if I pull back to the game, right? It's like this all looks like Earth now, right? When you played with the weird palettes and all of these things and how they used to exist in Final Fantasy, and like even this, like look at this effect over top. That's just, it's such a mushy effect, right? It
looks like when people back in like the early 2000s when people made PC JRPGs, and they would do these kind of like these very modern effects over old style art.
Yeah. I don't know.
It's
depressing
neat,
to me.
It's out of place.
Well, I mean, they did stuff like that all the time, but I don't think it came off... Like, Super Nintendo is full of, like, just screen warp effects. Like, every summon in Final Fantasy VI was basically doing something like that. It just didn't come off as soft and mushy. There's something about the overall aesthetic that's happening here that's just softening everything to...
I think it's because there's a certain library of these effects we got trained on when we were playing the old Super Nintendo games. So we know what those machines were possible of, and we accepted those effects because we were used to them. And all of a sudden, when you have, say, the battle transition effect, right? You can't get that effect on a Super Nintendo because you have these pixels are moving in places where they otherwise couldn't.
Yeah.
You can't have a box rotate 45 degrees and fall at an angle because the pixel density won't allow that.
Yeah.
You see it now, and you're like, okay, that's not a Super Nintendo game. That's a PC game trying to look like a Super Nintendo game.
Yeah. There is something. I'll see if I can find a comparable background to some of these.
This looks like a PC game that was inspired by Super Nintendo games.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, I guess, it's like trying to figure out how to do aesthetic. I mean, all of these things are gameable, right? It's like even if you compare my stupid Battle Bridge, which was insanity, where I hand animated, where is it? I saw it a second ago. Okay, where I hand animated the waterfall. And the splashes and stuff. So Matt added a reinforcing particle splash on top of my true pixel art splash. That's like individual frames. And then this is just like literally I just drew tons of frames. That thing took forever. But it's like, it gives a very different feel and tangibility, right? Same with, I don't know, I guess.
Any thoughts on the old style of, I forget what the tech's called, I forget what the technique was called, but you basically had a limited palette of say 4 to 8 colors, and you would actually rotate the indices of the colors to get the effect of a waterfall.
Yeah. So you're talking about where they tile colors. They have like 5 or 6 colors, and then they would literally cycle the colors in over each other, and it makes it look like flowing water. Sometimes it looks really good, sometimes it looks less good. It was necessary at the time just because of how much memory they had available. And I mean, it saves art time. It's I mean, you know what that would be? That would be like shifting my time to your time. So
Oh, can't have that.
Well, there's conversations like that. Like if you and me were working on a game, that's exactly what that would do. It would make what I would have to do become what you would have to do. And then if your artists are overburdened, you can do things like that. And if your programmers are overburdened, you can do things the other way by just drawing everything. So it's like
therein lies the character and DNA that games happen, the products of their production.
Yeah. I'm curious whether the people who worked on this were good 2D art, like good non-pixel artists, right? But it just, I don't know. Overall, it just gives me,
like even that, like they want it cheap and fast.
Yeah, even that swipe effect that your character does, it's not sharp. There's just so much mushiness around the pixels. It's like, even if you... I almost would have rather they went like Octopath and just do high def at that point instead of doing really mushy pixel art.
My problem is the frame rate of those effects, especially because your characters are all animating at a super low frame rate. But look at Cecil's sword swing.
Yeah.
That's animating at a full frame rate.
Yeah,
Same
60
with the V-bars, right? That also completely makes this feel like a PC game pretending to be a Super Nintendo game.
Well, this is one thing I fought against with Star Renegades like crazy. I fought against doing that, having mismatches of frame rate between assets. And the main thing was because we had spent so much time in frames on the character animations and the bad guy animations that it felt weird to me to add something it was almost like it was taking away from them. So we made the line in the sand to reinforce the animations we had rather than overpowering weak animations. Like Octopath barely has animations. They mostly just have the idle for every character, right? So they need to overpower them with spectacle because there's really no animations to reinforce. But we had already spent so much time on animation that I was like my foot in the sand, right? Like don't...
Foot in the sand, yep.
I was... Sorry, what is it? Is that the term?
Line in the sand.
I drew my line in the sand where I was like, no, this has to be an exact match, right? And I mean, we gave a little bit as time went on, but I still think that was the general thought of the aesthetic.
Oh boy, that looked like a freaking mobile game just then.
Yeah, I know.
See what his missed breath attack looks like. Give him a swing when he
dissolves. Even the way that the impact was on that attack he did on me was so weak. It, like, the Mist Dragon, when it hit you, it just, like, very softly, right? It's like nothing actually feels like it has impact. Everything's kind of softened.
Oh, yeah, like, well, the timing doesn't feel right.
Well, there's too many cushy in-between frames. It should like burst out quickly and then slow down, right? That's not what it's doing, and that's not how you do good animation, right? It just isn't.
But yeah, they kept the transition where he takes 2 frames to transition between parts, but they still have this. Oh no, hey, give him a swing. Come on, you can take the damage.
Why? You want to see the attack?
I want to see what that looks like. See, I really like the elemental pulsing color effect they had in the characters. Cause it reminds me of Secret Evermore and Secret of Mana.
Yeah.
I love that kind of visual effect. But because I saw it in the old days, I can buy into the effect that it fits.
Yeah.
But those like super soft pixels just does not look right.
No. I don't know. I am not a fan of this aesthetic personally. It's not bad, I just don't think it's particularly good, right? It's like even that, it's just like there's just such mushiness around all the pixel art and all of the effects.
You have the hard contrast lines in the characters, but your effects look like they're from Final Fantasy VI with super soft the super soft style they had.
But 6 didn't have that soft of a style with the effects. They just had...
Yeah, it looked good. Yeah, compare Fire 1 in Final Fantasy 6 to Fire in Final Fantasy 5.
Maybe?
There's like no hard contours on any of the effects.
I'd have to see them again. I don't think that they could play with opacity as much in Final Fantasy 6. Although they did tint the screen a lot. Like I know when you do Fire Dance and stuff, the whole screen goes red.
Yep. It's the same sine wave distortion as well.
Dissolve animation.
That's not too bad.
Well, that's probably pretty close to the original.
I think the original looked better actually, because that's a true random dissolve. The original, I think, had a much different death effect. Let me look it up.
Yeah. Well, this is the town you bomb.
All right. This might be a good place to
wrap it up
once we get through.
Yeah, we can just watch this and then. Oh yeah, they got the just a glowy kind of transparency on top of them.
See, now that's another one. Does transparency fit, right? Like, look at the glow they've got on the base of the fires.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not a fan. Rydia. The funny thing is that I went in bashing the characters, and I actually, after playing this, I think that they're the best part, despite the
Characters are
fact
they're
that
very well written for the time.
no, not the writing, the art. Like, I actually kind of prefer the characters over the mushy environments by a pretty large amount,
Yes.
despite the fact that I'm still not happy with what they did there.
No, they put like a. That could actually look pretty. That's not terrible.
No, they have
Like Street
the
Shake give it a lot of impact.
yeah.
Okay, look at the base of the mountain. They have a big streak of black there, and you never see that black again anywhere else in your mountains.
Yeah.
Like, where's your shadow coming from?
Ugh.
That forest does not look very good.
No.
Like, the
There's
trees are.
a very little
Yeah.
contrast between the areas that are playable versus that are not. And that's
Yes.
something I don't know if the original game was better at this or not.
Oh yeah. No, it definitely was. Because you could read the forest, go, I can't walk there. You can read the ground and go like, okay, I can't walk there.
Yeah, mind you, can't walk anywhere. But, anyways, this was like the first Super Nintendo game we played after Link to the Past. So it's like we had this in Christmas of '91. So it's like I don't know. I have a lot of fond memories of this game, but
What was the original release?
1991 or two, one of the two.
July 19th, 1991.
Yeah, it was actually pretty close to Super Nintendo's release date. So, here, I'll turn this off, and then we can just chat out the end of the call. But, yeah, I'll just force close that and pull up Discord. Anyways, yeah, so that's kind of an interesting story because it was like my favorite Christmas ever of all time. It was the Christmas Super Nintendo came out, and they had only been presenting it in stores at that point in time, right? And we went to go my grandpa's place, and my grandpa, they weren't well off or anything, but they had like a Super Nintendo, and we were like, "You have a Super Nintendo?" And they had Final Fantasy VI, Raid and Trad, A Link to the Past,
It was such
so
a
Final Fantasy
social
4.
economy of what friend and what person at school had which Super Nintendo games.
Yeah, Mario World, Final Fantasy 4, Raid and Trad. Trying to remember what else they had. Link to the Past. I think those were the primary ones. And we played them. We were there for like 2 weeks at Christmas. We played them like every day. Me and my brothers were fighting over the Super Nintendo to play. One day, my brother Jeremy played A Link to the Past 7 hours straight, and we were all upset with him because he wouldn't let us share. But
And here I am, like speedrunning that game in like 3.5 hours.
And then Christmas time, we opened our presents under the tree, and it was an exact duplicate of all of them. So it was a copy of Final Fantasy IV, it was Raid and Trad, it was Mario World, and Link to the Past. And
That was for all the brothers though, and you, right?
it was for all of us. It was for me and my sister and my two brothers. But
Oh,
that
for your
was
sister. Right.
yeah, that was
Yeah.
there's 4 of us in my family.
'Cause
So, but that was
those were
still the
not
best
cheap.
Christmas ever. Oh
Those were
no,
not cheap
no,
games
no,
back in those days.
it's not.
I remember buying Final Fantasy 6 for $100 and change after it came out
I bought almost
in
every
old dollars.
I bought every console after that. So it was like PS1, N64, all of that I bought after that. That was the last one that was well, I got my GameCube as a gift from a girlfriend. But most of the other ones. But anyways, like I don't know. For me it's like these games have such like places in my heart. Final Fantasy IV was interesting. And one of the things that worked for it and kind of against some of the other Final Fantasies that you had to change cast members all the time. So, which I mean, it got silly like the 6th time that Kane left your party, but the fact that characters were able to leave your party and come back was still something, right? And then you got to see them again when timer progressed, and that was a cool thing seeing like Rydia get much
when
better
she
as a
saves
summoner.
you, that blew my mind.
Yeah, totally.
For some experience of that.
And they were almost more willing to kill characters like Palmemporum and Tella because they had to clear up the slots, which to some extent.
Oh, the first time you get what's his name, Bagan, and when you go back to Baron Castle, and all of a sudden you have 6 party members, and you know, like that's not right. You can't have 6 party members.
Yeah.
Something's happening.
Something's gonna happen. You don't get the chance to
Yeah.
play with them. But they have that, and it's like there's a bunch of stuff they do with that in Final Fantasy IV, and they still carry the spirit of that in 6 because they give you Bannon in your party and General Leo at points and times, and they were more willing to kill off characters like that, right? And then they make you decide whether you are going to save Mog or Shadow. You have the
Yep.
option for both of those, so you can create death in your storyline, and then they had to
Did you
write
save?
around that. Of
Did you
course, I
save
shaved
Shadow
Shadow. Of
the
course.
first time you played?
I don't know if I did the first time I played. I
Yeah.
replayed it right afterwards, so it's hard to
Mm.
remember what was my first playthrough of it. But waiting at the floating continent for Shadow and things like that. Like they gave you some interesting options, and it's like people talk about Aerith all the time in Final Fantasy VII, but she's like the only person who dies the whole game, right? It's
Yep.
like
That was an
versus
argument made for Sephiroth, but
yeah, although given the post stories, it doesn't feel like he ever it can die. He's alive in your toe somewhere, and they'll bring it back that way or another. But
the amount they die is proportional to how much merchandise they can get out of them. So
exactly.
yeah.
So I have thoughts about this. I don't think the pixel art's done well enough. That's my thought. I think they could have hired. I could literally think of a dream team off the top of my head that could have made that look way better, and would have been gung ho to work on that. If they were even to pay even somewhat reasonably, and those people would have been absolutely like stoked to revisit those. So the fact that it's given to, I don't know if they just prefer studios to speak Japanese, but they're amazing Japanese pixel artists too. It's like, it just seems like there's a really weird mishmash. As someone who's like somewhat engaged in the pixel art community, right? That
It it probably just came down to we need this done in 3 months. Okay, do we take 2 weeks to find better artists? No, get started now.
yeah, I
Maybe
mean,
that was all there was to it.
there's a lot of questions that come to it when it comes to aesthetics on some of these things. It's like, do you do outlines? Do you not do outlines? How much do you change? How much do you keep true to the source? And it's like, even I find, when I'm doing stuff, like sometimes I do the outlines to feel more true to an aesthetic, and people respond worse to the work than the ones I do without outlines. And it's like, part of it is your style as an artist, part of it is trying to match the aesthetics of a specific type of game, right? Or what people are looking for in your work. And I don't know, but I honestly feel like it could have been done better. Like I would have loved to have done that project. I would have probably tried to pixel skin that entire thing myself if someone gave that to me, right? But
We can always find a ROM and just go to town that way.
nah,
Re-engineer it.
I would need some limitations lifted, I think. But
Can't do that, then you'll go mad with power.
yeah, well, no, I would go very specifically mad with power. I wouldn't go
Mm.
mad everywhere. I'd pick a few places to go mad and go mad there. That's how
You
I
have
typically
16 kilobytes.
16. Oh my gosh. I don't know how they did it. There's a beauty into those limitations. It's like when you look at what they had to do on like DS or SNES for making those games like operate in such a small scale and fit in memory. It's like, I don't know. That's
And here we are, it's like, 64 gigabytes really is enough to develop with. I need 128, but
you know,
that's a
megabytes or
different story.
gigabytes?
Oh, gigs of RAM.
Gigs. Yeah, well, typically you would want, I don't know. It really depends on what you're doing. There's always
Yeah,
like
yeah.
amazing ways people compress things out of that kind of space,
Oh,
but
I mean strictly in development context.
yeah,
Programmers will always use more RAM.
yeah. I get it. I get it. But any final thoughts on these remasters? Seeing a bit of four, how did you feel seeing a bit of four? Like, was it better or worse than you were expecting?
Actually, worse. I was hoping it was a lot more true to life with the original. I mean, they were just gonna clean some stuff up. I didn't expect them to change as much as they did, especially on the effects.
Yeah.
And just the mismatched frame rates honestly gets you me the most. It just feels like a mobile game.
Well, I think that there's something where it's like there's a niceness that comes to the effect that you're losing world tangibility. And that's it's a strange thing to say, but I mean these games have always kind of been secretly operating at 10 and 60 FPS at the same time. Like
Yep.
SNES games ran at 60 FPS in terms of interacting with the environments and whatnot, but the character animations were almost always 10 or less.
But that's the thing. You were very conscious of what parts could animate quickly and what could not, and you just dealt with it. And
It was
They
camera
feel like not
almost
following those
always.
rules.
It was camera almost always that operated at a different frame rate, and then everything else operated at, um, like
But your
all of.
characters can move too, as well, because your character and camera might be locked together, but
Yeah,
they
yeah,
were
yeah.
still moving at 60.
But their animations were like but you were still kind of locked to pixels. You're forced to move around in the pixels on screen. Your characters weren't between
Yes.
pixels. And this
Yep.
is another thing that happens because in modern things you have your character standing between pixels. And that is
Ah, no,
that's
don't
the
want it.
funny thing that was a difference between when I came on Halcyon 6 is they had already mismatched the pixels and I was not happy about it.
Not
When
having
I
it.
came on Halcyon 6, I was like, give me all of these things at the same size. It's even when we went to 2DX, it's like the things that I did with 2DX is I drew things in 2D and then scaled them so that the pixels would be roughly the same size when they went into the distance. And that creates a consistency because pixel sizes are almost always the same, right? Even though objects are actually far back in the distance. But the issue is that you can't do anything about the ground, anything that's actually going back in space, right? You could do it with
Unless you do some
every.
like super heavy parallaxing, but then that's not what you want because you can't do it. We can't do it with a flat plane. You mean?
Yeah. Well, like if you actually tilt, like we had to do, tilt the floor down, right? It's
Yep.
like any pixels further back on that are going to be way smaller. Any pixels closer are going to be much bigger. And that was the thing that I was fighting with. If I wish that there was a way around it. And I mean, Octopath just made all of its environments 3D with really low res textures. And that was their way around it. I was trying to keep more of the pixel aesthetic on things. So it was a bit of a different take in that regard. But it's like, I don't know. I I'm not happy with how these remakes are handled. I really am not. I just think I see so many better pixel artists out there, and I know people that would handle it much better. And it's like there are teams you could assemble. And you have good teams. I think it's just the most disrespectful coming from the people that inspired everyone the most. And I mean,
Yeah.
I know my personal feelings towards Square Enix are very different these days than they used to, but I also am aware of the splits. It's like when you have essentially Mistwalker is all formed from X Square employees. You have like the team, well, like even with Brownie Brown, with all the way back with Secret of Mana, they split off, right? And you have like, oh, who else? The big splits. There's a bunch of big splits from Square. I know that Aru's group or the people who did Kadelka and Shadow Hearts, they were all X Square employees. Tricrescendo was a mixture of music people and X Square employees. Monolith Soft was all X Square employees. It's like when you have like 10 game studios that are all X Square employees, it's kind of hard to expect them to have the same talent base that made those games in the first place. But those franchises are what inspired a lot of artists. Final Fantasy VI and Chrono Trigger definitely inspired a ton of artists with
Oh
pixel
yeah.
art. So to
Yeah.
to disrespect the art of pixel art with those specific games is one of the most disrespectful things you can do to that community, right? It's like, I mean, I know that the Grandia group just redid that with their Grandia remasters and they have bilinear filtering on everything. And it's like, don't. You're ruining Grandia. Like, PS1 and Super Nintendo were kind of like, I don't know, they're a lot of people's favorite for being in that space, in that, like, pixel reality space. With some of the stories, it's like that was when Square was on a roll. Everything from arguably from somewhere between Final Fantasy 4 and 6 to Final Fantasy 9, including like Xenogears and Parasite Eve and all of that, that's just gold, right? That's those are the best years that Square gave out games in my opinion. I mean, the fact that in that stretch you have Final Fantasy 6, 7, 9, 8's debatable.
I turned to a PC gamer after the Super Nintendo days, so I'm not the best judge of character for
Yeah,
that. But SNES was definitely my jam.
I was always building PCs and flip flopping between PC and console, but like I would build a PC and we'd be playing Quake and Unreal, and then I'd go upstairs and play PlayStation or all of that. So I played everything. I mean, I think this is the thing between all of these groups is it's like there are good games on everything. So it's like I don't know, just appreciate it all, right? Like good art is good art, good music is good music, and a good game is a good game, right? Unless you're making me listen to music on laptop speakers, please don't. Like that's where I draw the line with that.
That's the bilinear filtering of
Oh my
of
gosh.
old songs.
Well, they have a port to put headphones on. It's just like that. That's the
Uh,
that's one thing I can't handle.
No, I think overall they knew they could make a quick buck making a PC version, and they probably I think the order of the day was to get it done fast. It wasn't to pay homage to the
Mm,
originals.
it
So plagues our industry from time to time.
does. Well, I think that mostly covers it. We did some pixel redraws. We played some of the game. We watched the trailers. And I gave
We
my thoughts, and you gave yours. Hopefully, I didn't say the same thing over and over again. I probably did. I
we,
apologize
we
if I did.
reminisced of a simpler time when the pixels were large and the colors were limited.
Well, I think that there's also a cohesion of vision, and there's always something weird when you pass your vision on to someone else because
Yeah,
classic games.
they will never respect it the same way you do, or they will look at it with a different light.
Well, it's also the small team dynamics. Is that like there's something about this era of games because the teams were much smaller than they are in modern games. And because the teams were smaller, their visions had a chance at being a little bit more cohesive. So it's like, and this is why when you make someone else who doesn't understand what that studio's environment was like, what that synergy between that small group of individuals was, that you I don't know, you feel like some serial killer wearing someone else's skin. And that's, it's how it feels, right? It's like, because it was all built with such intent. And the people that did it, whether it was subconscious or whether they were completely aware of it, they were making all of those assets with that vibe in mind. And that's something that I always try to do, either subconsciously or like really overtly, trying to be aware of what I'm drawing and then how you put it together. And I think that this is kind of like why some of these Pandora's boxes are so hard to reopen.
Maybe they should stay closed. Just
Maybe
give me an easier way to play the classics.
it might be better. It might be better to do it through an AI in the future. Who knows? Like,
Uh,
who knows? Anyways,
mm,
thank you for coming on
AI
the.
downscaling. Anyway,
Thanks for joining us at the podcast. Thanks for
uh,
you poked me about wanting to do this, and I'm like, I can do Final Fantasy. Let's do this.
I could
So,
talk about Final Fantasy for weeks and weeks and weeks. So yes,
anyways, thank you so much for joining me,
was
Tyler,
an absolute
and
pleasure.
I'll catch you on the next one. Bye.
Bye bye.